In this video, our group will explain about the Victorian period, 1832 until 1900. The members of the group they are Dena Ramanda, Marlina, and Mega Yuliska. We have 3 points that will be explained here. The first is the history of Victorian period. Second is Victorian novels, and the last one is Victorian poetry. The history of Victorian period. In literature, the period starts with the death of Sir Walter Scott in 1832 and sometimes goes up to 1914. When Victoria became the queen, the monarchy was not famous. There were many social problems. Members of working class couldn't join trade unions or they would get punished. The price of bread was high, and the Chartist movement wanted food for all and social reforms. During Victoria's reign, Britain became the richest manufacturing country in the world. But then, several events began to end this success. The first is the Crimean War. 1854 was the first war for 40 years. Prince Albert, or Queen Victoria's husband, died in 1891. The minister was either Gladstone or Benjamin Disraeli. Many protests against the monarchy. A strong republican grew in the 1870s. The Queen became the Empress of India. As the problem of the Victorian society increased, Victoria became more and more symbol of Britain. This was an age of extremes. The working class were poor, the middle class grew rich and comfortable. Many double standards in society. Writers used their works to show that although on the surface this was a successful society, but below the surface there were many problems. Let's move to Victorian popular novels and writers. The first one we got Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens wrote so many novels, but there are 3 novels that so popular. They called Great Expectations, A Tale of Two Cities, and Oliver Twist. Great Expectation 1860 tells us about autobiographical story, and A Tale of Two Cities 1895 tell us about historical of French revolutions. Then Oliver Twist 1837 tell us about suffering children. And Dickens wants education for all children and shows his reader the kind of problems children had in the cities. Poor people had no chance to share in the success of the nations. Dickens' novels often tell the stories of victims, and he made of readers aware of many problems that Victorian society had.
The second is William Makepeace Thackeray. William was an English novelist, author, and illustrator who was born in Calcutta, British India. William wrote many novels, but there are 2 novels that so popular that called Vanity Fair 1847 until 1848 and Henry Esmond 1852. Third is George Eliot. George was an English novelist, poet, journalist, translator, and one of the leading writers of the Victoria era. She wrote 7 novels, but there are 2 novels that so popular that called The Mill on the Flood 1860 and Middlemarch 1871 until 1872. Next, Charlotte Bruni. Charlotte was an English novelist and poet. Her novel that's so popular is Jane Eyre, 1847. Next, Emily Brontë was an English novelist and poet who is best known for her only novel, Wuthering Heights, 1847. now considered a classic of English literature. Next, Elizabeth Gaskell. Elizabeth was an English novelist, biographer, and short story writer. Elizabeth's novel The Popular is North and South, 1854 until 1855. And the last is Thomas Hardy. Thomas was an English novelist, poet, and short story writer. Thomas wrote many novels, but there are three novels that so popular that called The Mayor of Casterbridge, 1889, Tales of the D'Urbervilles, 1891, and Jude the Obscure, 1895. Next, about the common themes and characteristics novels in Victorian period are romanticism, crime, poverty, power, politics, gender, sexuality, and Gothic. Let's move to Victorian popular poetry and writers. The first one is Alfred Lord Tennyson. He was a British poet and one of the most popular British poets in Victorian period. He wrote many poetries, but there are four poetries that so popular that called chiefly lyrical, 1830, Memoriam, 1833 until 1850, The Charge of the Light Brigade, 1855, and the last, The Idlers of the King, 1891. The second one is Robert Browning. Robert and Alfred were notable poets in Victorian England. Robert wrote many poetries, but one of the most popular poetry is My Last Duchess, 1842.
Next, Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Elizabeth was born in England March 6, 1806 and died in June 29, 1861. She didn't receive any formal education, but she was educated at home with her siblings. Elizabeth published a book entitled Poems in 1844 and caught Robert's attention and wrote to Elizabeth a letter. The two continued to write each other and fell in love. Elizabeth got married with Robert Browning. The sonnet How Do I Love Thee was tell of how much she loves Robert and all the ways that she loves him. Her love seems to be eternal and exists everywhere, and she intends to continue loving him after her own death. Matthew Arnold. Arnold was born in December 24, 1822 and died in April 15, 1888. He was elected Professor of Poetry at Oxford in 1857. Arnold has been characterized as a sage writer, a type of writer who satisfies and instructs the reader on contemporary social issues. Matthew Arnold's major works are Dover Beach, The Scholar Gypsy, Culture and Anarchy, The Forsaken Merman, To a Friend, The Buried Life, East London, West London, and many more. Edward Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald was born in 1809 and died in 1883. Was an English author and poet, best known for the first and famous English translation of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. Fitzgerald led a privileged life growing up in both England and France, then attending Trinity College, Cambridge, where he became friends with Alfred Tennyson and William Makepeace Thackeray. His first book was about his happy life at Cambridge, titled Euphrastor, a Platonic Dialogue in 1851. Christina Rossetti. Rossetti was born in December 5, 1830 in London and died in December 29, 1894. She excelled in work of fantasy, in poems for children and religions. Christina was the youngest child of Gabriel Rossetti and was the sister of the painter-poet Dante Gabriel Rossetti. Her major works are Goblin Market, Dreamland, Love from the North, Death Before Death, The Prince Progress, Dream Love, What Would I Give, Memory, and many more. Edward Lear. Edward Lear was born in May 12, 1812 and died in January 29, 1888. He was English artist, illustrator, musician, author, and poet, mostly non-literacy nonsense in poetry. His major work that very famous is the Book of Nonsense. Dante Gabriel Rossetti. Rossetti was born in May 12, 1829 and died in April 9, 1882. He was an English poet, illustrator, painter, and translator. Rossetti became the main inspiration for a second generation of artists and writers influenced by the movement. His famous works are The Girlhood of Mary Virgin in 1849 and Astarte's Eureka. Algernon Charles Swinburne. Swinburne was born on April 5, 1837 and died in April 10, 1909. He was an English poet, playwright, novelist, and critic. Swinburne wrote about many taboo topics such as lesbianism, cannibalism, sadomasochism, and anti-theism. His famous work are Atalanta in Calydon in 1865 and Poem and Ballads in 1866. Rudyard Kipling. Kipling was born in Mumbai, India, December 30, 1865 and died in London, January 18, 1939. He was an English journalist, short story writer, poet, and novelist. His famous work is Recessional in 1897. Next, the common themes and characteristics right in Victorian periods. These are social injustice, romanticism, the loss of innocence, religions, realism, pessimism, morality, and humor. That's all for this video. We do apologize if there are any wrong pronunciation or materials. Thank you for watching. Matur suwun.